Before you go, I'm going to ask you a little bit about some of the show and tell. You have brought little paraphernalia, your own. What do you got there? Is you had a special name for that pipe?
That's basically, normally it's this long, and it's Moroccan. It's called a sepsi.
Oh, sepsi.
And traditionally it's used to smoke a mixture of finely cut tobacco and pot. Now, I started smoking pot in this country many years ago, so culturally, I am North American as far as pot is concerned, and I don't like to mix tobacco like everybody else does in Europe.
Yeah.
I like it pure, which is why I like this. So I've cut it down because it can fit in a pocket. So basically, that's all it is.
Yeah. And what do you have some?
That's where I keep pots.
Oh, nice, excellent. Hey, is there an opium part of your museum as well?
Yeah, opium is there, but it's only
in a little den.
Third, I would say.
Third, and
tobacco, cannabis, hemp, and
then opium,
and then other plants.
And maybe you could tell us about a few of the highlights of the museum, some of the cannabis artifacts you have on display there.
Let me think. Do we have? I feel really stupid. Listen, one thing I meant to, talking of cannabis, one thing I really like to talk about because it's close to my heart is the question of indica and sativa. You briefly approached it. What people want to grow is indica. Well, yes, because it grows quickly, it gives you more, it takes less space, and all of that. And yet I've been around long enough that all I smoked for many years, when I started smoking in 1970, it must have been, was the traditional sativas, and with that clear high that they give you. And it's one thing that it's the one thing that I feel bad about what's happening. I feel bad about concerning pot is the way indicas have taken over.
It's part of the black market, don't you think?
Yeah, well, no, it's part of, I think it's part of this change, which is that this plant used to be imported from
places where it was revered,
where these varieties were grown, and it's been brought into the industrial countries, whether Europe or here and the US, and so our methods, our ways of thinking about agriculture have modified it. We've looked for varieties that would give more in less time. And at the same time, I feel we're losing almost the spirit of the thing, which is pot that opens your mind, whereas most indicas, I mean, it's good to have some indicas as a contrast because sometimes you just want to be relaxed and it's important. But if that's all that you know of pot, then to my way of thinking, of looking at it, you're almost missing the most important part.
I agree completely. We want to make a quick buck. Caucasians are world-renowned to scrimp on quality just to get quantity, and we lose track of what's important about cannabis. Couldn't agree more. I think that's why our government's screwing it up by just mixing all their pot together and giving one strain to medical users, while the compassion clubs offer a variety of strains, indicas or sativas, on tap.
That's the one thing I want to do when I'm in Vancouver, is go to the compassion club.
Oh, you must. Yeah, they're doing great things there, and I'm sure they'd love to have you.
Yeah.
Anything else? How is Grand Forks? Are you there much?
I haven't been there in 6 years.
Yeah.
And this cabin of mine, it's off Grand Forks. As I said, it's really the contrast that I'm looking for. Paris is a really fast city, and there's a lot going on for me there with the museum, and also we have a publishing company, and we do.
What's the name of the publishing company?
Mama Edition, Mama like a M-A-M-A, Mama Editions, and we also do mail orders, and we sell on the net. And so there's a lot of, so we sell books. I mean, we started out as a publisher, then we started distributing books, old books on the subject, and then we went into smoking accessories, whether they be to smoke cigars, or cigars. You have cigars being the noble end of tobacco.
Right.
If you smoke cigars, you need a special box to keep it at a certain dampness.
Right.
Stuff like that. Plus, of course, bongs and the rest of it, which weren't sold anywhere in France. So there's a gift shop in the museum,
right,
which both the exhibit part of the museum and the gift shop are breaking grounds, because, okay, in the things that in the exhibition part, for instance, we have, it's silly, but we have a stick, American style, just pot, thin thing with, and then we have a blunt, and then we have a joint, the conic European style, stuff like that. To have that and to show it objectively.
In France.
It's nothing.
Yeah.
You said, highlight, tell me about highlights. But just to tell you the spirit of what we're doing. It's part of this business of things that were clandestine, making them where they can be visible, bringing them above the table. So that's what we're doing at the museum. And because we do it in style, it's allowed us to do things that nobody thought could be done in France.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it's more of a police state in France than compared to, say, some of the northern European countries that get away with so much more freedom, or Switzerland that's always been so autonomous and kind of on its own.
Well, you must always make a difference between the law in any country and how it's applied.
Yeah.
And so the law is very tough in France. Like for smoking a joint, in theory, you could go to jail, end up in jail for a year, but no one does.
Yeah.
And there are more people that smoke pot in France per capita than any other European country.
Yeah.
So yes, the laws are tough, but in practice there is a lot of there is repression, but not that much. There's hardly anybody that goes to jail just for smoking.
Yeah. But those laws, and is there much of a reform movement in France? Like, when are those laws going to be attacked in the courts or in the political, by a politician, do you figure?
So, we're at a time in Europe at the moment where it's the laws are going to change. So the Swiss the Swiss government, they've really thought about it for many years. They've done studies, and they're the only one that are really approaching it with the sort of global overview. And in France, it's going to change also. And we have a right-wing government now. For a long time, France had both half and half, like the prime minister and the president. One was a socialist and the other one was right-wing, and vice versa.
Right.
And so for the first time in a long, long time, they're both right. And so they come out with a very repressive stand. And yet they are going to change the law so that whereas now it's written in the law that you can go to jail for drug consumption, whether it's be cannabis or anything else, that's going to be taken out.
Well, it sounds very much like Canada, and in some respects, the no going to jail for simple possession is being removed all over the world. In other respects, they're using fines and treatment
it's hard to tell.
To make it a slicker form of punishment and prohibition.
So it's hard to tell whether it's a step forward or not.
Yeah.
And again, we won't know until we see it happen, because what you put in the law is one thing, and then how you actually apply the law is another.
Yeah.
And until you've seen that, you don't really know. Because it could be that, the law sounds better because you don't go to jail anymore, so basically it's decriminalized. But if they're tougher with their fines and really implement the fine system, it could be worse than the law that we have now, which is tough but not applied. So it's really
Well, let's hope that in both Canada and France and anywhere else that they're doing the decrim scam, that people will be empowered by the fact that they're not going to go to jail, they're just fighting a fine, and maybe they'll be more able to fight that themselves and not have to go to a lawyer and just stand up in court and say, it's like coffee, it's like peppermint tea, give me a break, where's the victim, and tear it up in their face.
And you could see how, from a historical point of view, you could see how it could be just the intermediary stage from going from total ban to okay, well, it's part of life. Let's do what we can with it.
Let's hope so. Hey,
yeah.
Thank you for your brave work in France, and I can't wait to come to Paris.
Yes, please
and,
do.
and check out your museum, and maybe we'll find a corner we can go around the corner and do something discreetly.
After hours.
After hours, exactly. Well, it's